Hello and welcome to another episode of House of Decline, the podcast. House of Decline, the podcast. And today we have on a wonderful guest. You may know him as StolenDans from Twitter. Writer, filmmaker, journalist. It's Jared. How you doing, Jared?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on today.
Absolutely. And you're on here today because weeks ago you posed to me a challenge. What about a Bob Dylan episode? How about a Bob Dylan episode? And I was like, yeah, I'm getting into it. I'm getting into Dylan. Why did you say this out of the... I know you're a Dylan fanatic, a self-described Dylan fanatic, but what made you think of this?
Well, I mean, after you've hosted several spaces on Twitter that I've been on, and I've always just enjoyed talking to you about shooting the breeze about whatever it happened to be, I thought, this would be a really good guy to talk Bob Dylan with.
Yeah.
I'm sure you didn't know what you were getting into when you were like, I'm going to chronologically listen through every album. And then you turned into like the Howard Hughes and the Aviator. You're sitting in the room with all your jars.
Yeah, my jars of piss. My hair is grown long and also suspiciously curly, like Bob Dylan's as well.
Listening to his 50th Frank Sinatra cover. Actually, no, you haven't gotten there yet.
I haven't gotten to the Frank Sinatra record, which is great. I didn't know, but he doesn't even. He covers songs that Frank Sinatra made popular because Frank Sinatra never wrote any songs. Right. But still, the Great American Songbook.
Exactly, the Great American Songbook.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that there would be some great conversation here. And then I did not even realize that Bob Dylan was coming to town the same week we had set to record.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, how perfect. We can talk about not only all of these great records that you've listened to, but also these versions of the songs that he does that you can't even tell are from his records. You can't even tell what song they are at all.
Yeah, because
until after he's finished playing them. Yeah,
he can only sing two notes now, and he's got like a Zydeco band, and then like a gypsy jazz band, and then like he's got very eclectic backing music now.
Yeah, and there's kind of a rockabilly thing going. There's a blues influence. And then there's the lounge singer type influence too. Those old Great American Songbook things, like you said. And it was interesting watching him play again from a different vantage point. Last time I saw him was 2 years ago on the same tour, and I had floor seats to that, so I couldn't really see him very well. I could see the top of his head peeking out over his piano, but I couldn't really see him. And then this time I was stage left, so I could see him the entire time, see everything he was doing. And it was really interesting. The entire band is in a semicircle around him, looking at him the entire show. Because every now and then he'll wave his arm or he'll kind of shoot a glance at one of his band members, and they'll either play a little louder or improvise a little bit, or they'll pull back a little bit. If he gave him kind of like a stank eye, then they pull back a little bit and let him do his thing a little more.
Yeah.
But it was just wild to watch him rearrange and conduct while also trying to sing these songs. Yeah. This guy, Bob Dylan, great artist. Has anyone ever said this before?
This Bob Dylan fella seems like he's got a little bit going, and he's 82 and he's still pretty spry.
Yes, he turns 83 in May.
Wow.
Which is ridiculous to me. It's not like he's doing cartwheels or anything on stage, but the fact that he can, sing a dozen songs in a row without passing out at that age is impressive. I don't think I would have the breath to do that many songs in a row.
Yeah. And he's still recording good material in 2023. Apparently, I didn't get to the 2020s material. I didn't.
I'm anxious to hear what you think about that one, because that one has grown to become one of my very favorites of his records. I love the older Dylan a whole lot.
Yeah.
I love the late 90s to the 2000s, 2010s, and now to the present. I think that I just love his weird sounding voice.
Oh, yeah, it's great. Yeah.
I love the kind of Huckleberry Finn type of he goes back to his folk traditions, but he also goes back to his 50s and 60s type of music, but not the countercultural type stuff, like the very traditional sounding instrumentation. I
The
love
very first album. Yeah, he goes back to the 1962 Bob Dylan album.
Yeah. And it's almost it's like adult contemporary type Dylan, a little with the folk tinge to it, right?
Yeah, but there's a real darkness to it.
But there's a real darkness to it.
Existential hell to it. It's like every album is Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska now.
Right, exactly. Yeah, like we said before starting the recording, there's like the sort of Southern Gothic influence to it. There's also like an Edgar Allan Poe thing, and he name drops Edgar Allan Poe in the last album. But all of these really dark, almost associated with horror type stuff. And if you see the poster for his most recent tour, it's like the skeleton with the big syringe, like all these really bizarre, creepy images that he uses these days. But he's
like
a scary
very
old
True
fellow.
Detective, you know, it's the Saturnalia associated with the that almost pagan tradition that's represented. And one of the two influences that he cites are Woody Guthrie and Robert Johnson, right? And intimate to Robert Johnson's legacy is the deals with the devil and this sort of
you kind of wonder, did Bob
quality
make a deal with the devil? And if so, when did he do it? Right? Because if he has this, he first comes from this Jewish tradition, then goes to this Christian tradition, and then just kind of wiles the fuck out for the 80s, and then arrives at whatever he is now, which is sort of, it's not an evangelical type thing anymore. There's the religious imagery still, but it's not preachy or condescending or anything like that. So I don't know what exactly we'd call this part of his legacy. But he kind of fumbles between all sorts of different types of belief systems, but now he plays it a little closer to the chest. He doesn't really talk so much about that stuff. Yeah,
well, I think it's very interesting. Like, so hot take: the Christian albums are pretty good. That's the most obvious Bob Dylan hot take is that it turns out the Christian albums are actually pretty good because they are. I consider Street Legal to be part of the part of the Christian arc because it has that themes, changing of the guards, and it's also
it's kind of the on-ramp to the Christian period for sure.
I really fucked it up with Sarah. How about Jesus? Desires my horniness album, my post-divorce horniness album, and now I'm very lost. How about Jesus?
Well, are you familiar with Keith Green at all?
I don't know Keith Green.
Okay, so Keith Green was a Christian recording artist in the late 70s, early 80s. He died in a plane crash in 82 or 83, I want to say. But the way Keith Green tells the story is he was a Christian recording artist, but also sort of an evangelist. He'd do a ministry out of his house. And he met this woman. She came to be saved, became an evangelical Christian. And he told her, okay, now that you're a Christian, you can't keep living with your boyfriend. She's like, okay, cool. I'm moving out of my boyfriend's place. And then her boyfriend comes around and is like, hey, what the hell? And her boyfriend's Bob Dylan. So the way he gets introduced to kind of this evangelical music scene is because his girlfriend won't sleep with him anymore. Which is so fascinating. And exactly. And his art kind of follows it. So he gets in with Keith Green. I think they both play on each other's records at least once. But then when Keith Green dies, that's about the same time the Christian records era of Dylan ends, and he becomes kind of disillusioned with the whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really fascinating period because a lot of the Christian music we have now is very commercial, right?
Yeah.
And it's aimed at sort of mimicking
your skillets and whatnot.
Right. And they're all still sort of drawing from U2, right? In the 80s and the 90s. And they're starting to get away from that a little bit. But they want to be this very, a lot of times they'll call it like seeker friendly, so that it can be appealing to like a non-Christian audience. Whereas every time Bob Dylan makes a new kind of music, it's like he's attempting to alienate as many people as possible. So like when he goes to electric music, alienates all his folk base, right? And then he goes over to his street legal music was also pretty alienated, but then going explicitly Christian alienated even more people, right? he's not doing it as a commercial move. He doesn't convert to pick up a new audience, because the evangelical audience was different back then, because there wasn't as much of this massive contemporary Christian audience like we have now, and there wasn't like the big Christian movies either.
It's also just a very weird take on Christianity too, which is why it's like I don't see it getting. I mean, to me, like the key to understanding Bob Dylan's entire career is in the Christian arc, and specifically one lyric in the song "Precious Angel" where he talks about Jesus died a criminal's death. Oh. I understand why you got into Jesus, Bob Dylan. He's just like me. He's an outlaw. He's an outsider. He's a Jew. Sarah broke up with me. She broke up with Jesus. You know?
Yeah, he's like he's this Jewish fella who's saying all these crazy things and says he's a prophet. He's like, oh, that's just like me.
Yeah, but that's America, though. It's a nation of outsiders, right? It's a nation of like rugged individualists who are all convinced that they are Jesus's unto themselves. You know, not everyone. That's an overgeneralization, but that is. Well,
and the way Dylan talks about his conversion experience, he says that Jesus physically, literally came to him while he was in a fever state or something like that. And after he saw Jesus, he's like, okay, I got to be a Christian now. So I don't know if that was around the time he was doing like lots of heroin or something like that, and he had some kind of religious experience. But he literally had like a Saul on the road to Damascus type encounter with Jesus.
That sounds like something that would happen to him as a Jew. But also, that's what dying a criminal's death and sees persecution. Unfair persecution is the theme of his music. I'm always being, whether it's talking about in his protest music or whether it's talking about in his personal relationships, there's always this theme. And it reminds me of, you know, he's always also trying to run away from his Jewishness, because it's like, I don't want to be a Nebuchadnezzar Jewish kid from Duluth. I want to be like the hero of the American South. But, you know, I think
this ding-dang cancel culture out here, out to get him. Yeah. Wokeness has gone too far.
Yeah, and wokeness is my enemy.
Yeah, because I mean, like, Ballad of Thin Man, he's obviously going off on this journalist, right? And then you get to Blood on the Tracks. He's talking about not completely autobiographical, but talking about being persecuted in the media. Yeah. He has this fixation for a long time. So yeah, I think there's a lot to draw from the persecution complex.
It's a very Jewish thing. It's a very, as a Jew myself, you know, it's very.
Say, as a Gentile, I won't comment and say
you can. I don't know. You might know a lot. You might be one of those weird Gentiles who's like, I'm into Jewish stuff. You know, I read a lot of Isaac Bashevis.
Yeah, like that Seinfeld episode. Well, I'm a Jew now, Jerry.
Yeah, you're Tim Watley. You're going to be Tim Watley.
Yeah.
You're going to be Jewish just to feel closer to Bob Dylan, which I'm sure some people have done.
I'm converting just so I can make the jokes about Bob Dylan specifically.
Yes. But it's Franz Kafka's The Trial, right? You know, you're accused of something that you haven't done, and it's that constant fear of guilt and pressure, this sort of trauma experience that you learn throughout even the most basic stories as in your Jewish upbringing. You know, Passover. Remember that time we were almost murdered? You know, Purim. Remember that time we were almost, you know, it's this very deep entrenched idea of like hypervigilance and constantly being under the thumb of this evil authority. But that's everyone in America. You know, that's just a nation of people who feel like that. Even if you're in the elite class in America, you still feel like that for some reason.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, America just always had a chip on its shoulder.
Yeah.
Right. About it's like we just wish we were cool like British people, right? Or cool like everybody we persecute, we sort of wish we could be more like, and then everybody we're going away from, we wish we could be more like, and we just it's so tough to be a white American, man. That's what I'm trying to say.
It's really
a white
tough,
Christian American. It's rough for us out there.
It's terrible out there.
Because of wokeness and
wokeness
cancel
is
culture.
Hurting, it's hurting a lot. You got Sydney Sweeney. She's bringing it back, though. She's bringing it all back. Sydney Sweeney.
Oh, man.
I wonder what Bob Dylan would have to say.
Bob Dylan thinks about Sydney Sweeney.
What does Bob Dylan think about Sydney Sweeney?
I always kind of wondered, like, to what extent Bob Dylan even knows about popular culture, because I know he watches like a bunch of DVDs of like the Twilight Zone and old TV shows. I think he was talking about that in an interview a couple years ago. I wonder if he ever just watched an episode of Hot Ones, or if he's I know Mark Maron approached his manager about bringing him on the show for like the 1000th episode, and then again for like I think maybe the 1500th episode. And his manager's like, "There's no way. He's never coming. He's never gonna do that." He's so guarded with his interviews, and all of his interviews are really short now. He's like, the only thing he wants to put out into the world is his art, which I really respect. I think that's there's this thing now where you have to promote yourself so heavily. You have to be a personality as well as an artist.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's been variations of that forever, but now it's like you have to post all the time. You have to upload funny videos or pictures of yourself all the time to keep your engagement levels up.
Yeah.
Just to, find somebody who could be interested in your art, and not buying your art, but just like streaming your art, giving you those half of a penny per billion streams or whatever. So I don't know, that's kind of a weird tangent, but he came up at a time where you actually go and buy millions of his records, so he has all of that money. But if he came up in this era, it's much more difficult to make a living making that kind of alienating music he makes. If he were surviving just on streaming of Rough and Rowdy Ways or Modern Times or like any of these more recent records, it'd probably be kind of tricky to be Bob Dylan.
Well, he was a bit more, I mean, you could argue that in the 60s, he was doing the 60s equivalent of TikToks, or he was, he was cultivating more of sort of this. I mean, but the thing is, like,
the 60s equivalent of the renegade dance on TikTok. Was his going electric? Was renegade TikTok?
Yeah. Yeah, but I guess you can't even accuse him of parasociality, because anytime like fans got too close or too like salivating, like he just got annoyed by over earnest like hippies, the equivalent of people today who are still like fans of Gritty on Twitter. Like,
well, what's I like about him is he just give false answers to so many questions and just completely confuse journalists and biographers for decades. And now it's kind of much more difficult to lie to somebody about your background when your background is so well documented everywhere. So it's much more difficult to cultivate a mysterious aura like he's had for so long, because if the Zoomer Bob Dylan, he would have had a Twitter or a Facebook, or he wouldn't have had, maybe not a Facebook, the Zoomers don't really have a Facebook so much, but would have had a TikTok or a Twitter and Instagram or something. So it would have been much more difficult to keep the mystery alive.
Yeah. I mean, you need to keep the mystery alive, because if he becomes too singular of a person, then that he loses that ability to be mercurial and to be many different characters throughout his career, which is the appealing part of Bob Dylan. They made a whole movie about it, which I haven't seen. Have you seen I'm Not There?
Yes, and I am a big fan of that one. I've always loved it. And the Jokerman fellas hate that movie. They despise it. And that kind of broke my heart, but I do really like that movie. But I agree. I think so many of his songs, which people call autobiographical, like the Blood on the Track song, I don't think he would make songs like that if he couldn't have this removed from it, if he couldn't be all of these different characters. If he was, like you said, like a much more singular person, counterintuitively, I don't think he would be as open about his life. Even
like, I mean, I've noticed now, like any take you post, any opinion that you post, or any like statement you make to a journalist, right, will be twisted by anyone to mean anything.
Right.
So if you speak prosaically, or if you speak declaratively, then anyone has a chance to recontextualize that. But the great thing about songs and poetry is that they can mean any number of things inherently. Right. So it's like you can't really recontextualize it because it could mean the exact opposite of what it means. Or it's something like, I was always turned off by Dylan before because, like, I had a big problem with Dylan. Anytime I tried to get into him, I always started with Blonde on Blonde, which is a great album, but it's not the one to start with. You know, you should start with Freewheeling, or even Blood on the Tracks is a better one to start with. But, Blonde on Blonde is a deeply ironic album, which is something that I realized only upon listening to the records chronologically. So there's like a deeply, because just like a woman, he says some comically misogynistic stuff in that song.
Well, it's starting with that one is so funny because it's him when he's on the very top of the mountain and he's starting to really resent that he's up there, starting to really resent people around him. And yeah, he gets really ironic. He just starts shooting venom all over the place. And then he has his motorcycle accident and comes back. He's like, oh, I'm a folk artist again. Or no, I'm a Nashville crooner now.
I spent a lot of time with these Canadians in a dark room. And now I'm country. Levon Helm had to go to the Gulf of Mexico.
And it's funny that it's these Canadian guys who bring back this Americana roots rock type thing. Yeah. It's like it took Canadians to tell Americans how to make American Civil War music.
And Levon Helm.
And Levon Helm. Yeah, exactly. Get one for the flavor, you get one American in the bunch to
We have to. I did not
get
expect
one kind of like racist in there to get a little bit.
Hey, I'm sure. Is Levon Helm racist? No.
I'll have to consult with Julia on that for eat the document on Twitter. I know that she loves Robbie Robertson. Does not so much like Levon Helm, because I think he has made some sort of not so great comments over there. We're canceling
Levon Helm. We're coming for the band. It's fucking the last waltz here for the band.
Yeah, no, he. I think he's probably said some things, but also if you make music about the Civil War, you probably have some kind of feelings about
whatever,
it.
You know.
But he's dead. It's like
he's also good. He's a great actor. He died. The drumming is great. I love Up on Cripple Creek. I can't say Cripple anymore.
Up on Differently Abled Creek.
Up on DoorDash Creek.
Gosh.
Oh no! I tried. Luckily,
I DoorDashed for a while, and most of the people I'd say I delivered to were probably like college students. Yeah. Not necessarily people who were like homebound or disabled and stuff like that. But
it's fine. I don't care. I don't care if I DoorDash discourse. I used to do it. I don't do it anymore.
That's similar to the Bob Dylan line. I used to, but I don't anymore. Yeah. That's his
he was
philosophy.
Referring to DoorDash.
Yeah, he was referring to DoorDash. Yeah. No, it's anyway, all that to say, racist, who can really say? And who can say about Bob Dylan either? Is he a misogynist? Is he a racist? Is he any of these things? Maybe a little bit.
I think, yes. I think I would say that Bob Dylan is a misogynist because he seems to admit it later on in his career. Like, the turning point of his career is Oh Mercy, which is a great fucking album. Because it comes after... There's only one really bad Bob Dylan album, and which I just listened, and Knocked Out Loaded, the 1986 one, which is just... garbage production. Everyone's just fucking lazy. It's very lazy.
But you didn't hate Empire Burlesque or Down in the Groove.
No, Empire Burlesque is wacky, which I like. It's like full on like Moonbeam City. And Dark Eyes, which is the acoustic track at the end, everyone likes anyway because it's it's like the old time. And fucking Down in the Groove has Silvio on it.
That's
just
right.
An excellent. Just an incredible, wonderful song. Like Bob Dylan at his most like Club Med, Kokomo, like feeling hot 80s thing.
Yeah. And you haven't really gotten into live Dylan at all yet, right?
No, not yet. Yeah.
He loved playing Silvio. And the concert versions are way better. I like the version on the album, but he goes nasty on Silvio in concert.
Yeah.
So would
it
definitely
fucking
recommend.
rules. It's a fucking it's one of the best. It's a top 5 Dylan song for me, I gotta say. Which is
really?
Yeah,
okay,
I think it's that good. I think
that is a hot take. That's a Jokerman take right there. Yeah. Shout out to the Jokerman boys.
I agree. If the Jokerman, which I haven't listened to, but I am assured is a very good podcast about Bob Dylan.
I'm sure some of them very nice people on that podcast.
Very nice people on the Jokerman podcast.
Yeah, no, they're Evan and Ian. They're great. I love that podcast. And they're about to do. They did the Velvet Underground season and the Lou Reed and John Cale season, and now they're gonna do the Beach Boys discography. So I am hyped for that.
That is a weird discography because everyone forgets about the 70s and 80s Beach Boys stuff.
Yep.
There's a lot of it, and it is not
really bizarre.
So good.
But some of it, because like the whole Jokerman pitch is they go into the commonly referred to as the bad albums of any given artist, and they're like, okay, there's actually a lot of great stuff on this. Maybe this is a great album.
Yeah, that's the joke about Bob Dylan too. The Joker man about Bob Dylan is that his bad albums, like, so what I was pleasantly surprised to discover is that the 1962 Bob Dylan album, the first one, which I always hear says you can skip this one. No, it's essential. You should, absolutely, it's great. It's fucking great. Yep. Like, and later on it gets mirrored in the 90s when he does his like weird-ass reinterpretations of old folk music. Like, why do people say the 1962 album is skippable? He literally made his bones on like the college circuit and folk circuit by doing these very idiosyncratic interpretations of old-ass American folk music, and you get this great document right up front. You know, so no, the 1962 album is like, if Freewheeling is a 10 out of 10, then the 1962 album is like an 8.5 out of 10. It's pretty good. It's, you know,
Mr. Pitchfork over here. Yeah,
Mr. Pitchfork. You know, I'm getting into my punctualism.
So is Knocked Out and Loaded 0.0? It's
not a 0. It's not that. It's not. I'm not giving it the chimpanzee pissing into its own mouth review, because it's
probably like a 3 or 4. Like, it's got Brownsville Girl.
Right? Yeah, everyone like that. Yeah. That song is a fucking slog. That's it. It's good. It's like written by Sam Shepard as well. Yeah, but it's like Bob Dylan is like he's really phoning it in. On the 80s were not a good time for him, I think.
Yeah, and then when
Jesus burnout, he got real Jesus burnout.
A lot of the 80s outtakes are very good. Once you start getting into those bootleg albums, I think you'll really dig them. Yeah, once you finish with just like the studio albums, man, that's like 1% of what he's released.
Oh yeah, the bootlegs and live stuff. But yeah, I just had only heard 7 of like the best studio albums before. Yeah, and I was like, no, I need to hear some of the weirder stuff, some of the supposedly lesser stuff. Because also, hot take, which is a very common hot take, Self-Portrait, good album. Maybe even in the top half of Dylan albums, even. Yeah, no, that is a really good one. And the bootleg version of that, a lot of tasty outtakes from that one. I don't think there was ever a period where his music was irredeemable. Even his worst era had a lot of great music. The 80s is generally, the Empire Burlesque to Down in the Groove is generally thought of to be his worst run of albums. Yeah. And that's only 3 albums, and 2 of them are so funny. You know, Empire Burlesque is like him going like full like Danger Zone. Which is, it's so great. Almost intentionally, too, because he starts dressing like he's a guest star on Miami Vice or something. Yeah, it's fantastic. You know, no one escaped. No one escaped that. Reagan got everybody, even Bob Dylan. So sad. Have you seen from the Empire Burlesque album, Paul Schrader directed one of the music videos for Tight Connection to My Heart. And if I remember correctly, that one's like it's like a Japanese noir type vibe. And he's like a lounge singer or something. Like, it's been a while since I've watched it.
But then he also, I think it was Paul Schrader who directed a couple of music videos I think were unreleased for the Infidels sessions too. Mm-hmm. And then those were released recently when they did some bootleg stuff around that era. But shout out to Paul Schrader.
Shout out to Paul Adam Friedland show guest Paul Schrader.
Gosh, that was so good.
Yeah.
I was shocked that they got him.
They got a good booker. I mean, they got Neil deGrasse Tyson. They got a good booker, whoever they got.
Yeah.
But yeah, freaking. Yeah. Also, okay, here's something that I wanted. You said that Bob Dylan doesn't make a lot of contemporary references, but the thing that I've always been most fascinated by is on Slow Train Coming, specifically on Gotta Serve Somebody, which is another, like, might be a top 5 Dylan song for
great. Me. And he still plays that one in concert. That's one of the few hits that he plays.
Fucking, because it fucking rules.
It's great.
It fucking is awesome. It fucking is but yeah, in that song, the most perplexing Dylan line to me of all time, where he references Ray J. Johnson. That to me is the most. Yeah. Do you know about Ray J. Johnson?
I don't.
Do you know about Ray J. Johnson?
I don't.
I only know about it from The Simpsons because they kept making jokes about Ray J. Johnson. So he was this comedian that was popular in the mid-'70s whose entire bit was going, "You can call me Ray. You can call me Jay. You can call me Ray J. You can call me RJ." And he would go on with a series of this. And until, he got huge doing this bit, but the joke is, well, you don't have to call me Mr. Johnson. And he would, that was the line. He would end on, you don't have to call me Mr. Johnson,
Wow.
But so big Ray J. Johnson got. It was incredible. Off of this one routine. It's just,
That's so funny.
So much on the Simpsons, they make jokes of like, who we got booked this week? Ray J. Johnson. And then Gabbo's head starts spinning. And that's how I first heard about him. But on Gotta Serve Somebody, Bob Dylan says, "You can call me RJ. He references Ray J. Johnson, which is like, how ubiquitous was Ray J. Johnson that in one of Bob Dylan's best songs, one of his legendary artist's best songs, permanently tribute to this middling comedian. But when you think about it, Ray J. Johnson is the quintessential Bob Dylan character, this pathetic, and I don't know about Ray. Maybe he's okay. Ray J. Johnson,
maybe he's a great guy. We don't know.
Yeah.
But I wonder if he was going
Yeah.
I wonder if he was going through it. You can call me Gallagher. No. You can call me Carrot Top. No. Who's the Russian guy?
Yakov Smirnov.
You can call me Yakov.
But it seems like that whole series of lines was because Ray J. Johnson's entire thing was, you can call me Ray, you can call me Jay, and there's a whole series of you Gotta Serve Somebody of you can call me lines. So it's like like, I wonder if that was deliberately. I wonder how taken Bob Dylan was with Ray J. Johnson.
Yeah, no, I wonder. He has such a peculiar sense of humor, and sometimes it's hard to tell if he's literally just like taking the piss, like this is a joke, or if there's something more to it. I think that's what makes it interesting to kind of mine a song like that. It's like, what did he mean by this? Why did he say that?
Why did he reference Ray J. Johnson? That's like him referencing like Taxi or something like that, or like another. It's like him talking about Danny DeVito on Taxi.
Yeah, you can call me Judd Hirsch.
Yeah,
he was Taxi, right? He was.
Judd Hirsch was on. Yeah, he played Alex Riegert.
Man.
I watched that show a lot. Shouldn't have been watching Taxi as an 8-year-old, but I was.
I was gonna say, are you secretly like 60 years old?
I'm not 60 years old. They just had a lot of syndicate. I watched a lot of old sitcoms as a child because I don't know. They had him on TV. It's what was on. It's what was on. So I watched.
And see, I was the Nick at Night generation. So it was always playing Friends.
Yeah.
And then always playing George Lopez. I don't remember if they had Seinfeld or not, but always playing these 90s sitcoms.
Yeah.
And then you had. Yeah, I actually don't remember if they had. I guess that probably did have Fresh Prince, and it might have been later on in the evening. But yeah, I just remember that every time I would go to like my granddad's house, like the only kid thing there was to watch would be like Friends.
That's for kids, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there are a lot of sex jokes for kids.
Yeah, exactly. Friends, good show, maybe not really, but if you're a kid and you don't want to watch Fox News for 8 hours, then it's it's fine.
There's some Friends jokes. I laugh at meat sweats. I say meat sweats to myself a lot. Joey, he's gluttonous. We love our Joey. I should ask you, what is your Dylan history? How do you, because you're a Zoomer, you're a fairly young guy, how do you get into Dylan so young, and what is the source of your obsession with him?
Oh man, well that's an interesting question, because nobody in my family really likes Dylan. In fact, I would say they kind of dislike a lot of his music, probably.
Fucking hippie.
I don't know. I guess it would have been like at some point when I was a teenager and I started learning how to play guitar, and I started learning, I guess, when I was 13 or so. And this was around when like you had the Mumford and Sons era, like the stomp clap type folk music. And it was around that era I started listening to that music, and then I go all the way back to the original, and that's around when I think I probably saw Inside Llewyn Davis for the first time. And then it all starts kind of coming together, and I just become so fascinated by Bob Dylan. I start telling all my friends, it's like, you gotta check this guy out, and nobody ever does. Nobody cares. But I don't know. I just, something started up in me. Like this, it was just so unlike other music I had heard at the time. And my background is growing up evangelical Christian, growing up with mostly like Christian contemporary music, and then starting to get into like the broader pop music. And then I feel like this was the first kind of artist of real substance that I got into. So yeah, a lot of my other music interests trace back to him. That's probably how I got into like Lou Reed, Velvet Underground, or got into Leonard Cohen, or got into any of these various other Townes Van Zandt. I just listened through his whole discography a couple of weeks ago. Great songwriter, underrated.
Turns out, Townes Van Zandt, great songwriter.
Turns out, great songwriter. But all of my other musical interests, they go all the way back to this seed, this Bob Dylan. But he remains my favorite, I think, these years later.
Is it because of the thing about contemporary Christian music, the thing about like the Bible is there's a lot of hard lines in the Bible. I get why people get into the Bible, because just the literary quality of it, even translations of it, usually preserve that sort of sense of poetry that it has. You know, the reason why, or it's the same thing where I've heard people talk about the Quran. You get into it because of the rhythm and the poetry. Even though like a lot of this stuff, so like X begot X begot X, there's some like really weird run-on sentences of the Bible, but it's sort of the rhythm and the word choice of it. That's what gives you that sort of sense of pause and quality of it. And a lot of contemporary Christian music does not have that sense of literary rhythmic quality to it. So it's like harder to,
and that's a lot of people, this is kind of a cliche, a lot of evangelicals who want a little more structure, a little more substance, a little more of some sort of aesthetic beauty, they just become Catholic. Or they become Anglican or something like that. And
just like the Red Scare gals.
Exactly, just like the Red Scare gals. But yeah, you're right. The Bible, it's not a very clean or neat or like, it's got a lot of really shocking content. But then if you listen to like your top 40 Christian contemporary music, it's not very shocking. It's stuff you've heard before. It sounds like you're singing about Jesus as your boyfriend. It's got just really kind of generic.
It's not about life, it's like, it's not about, killing and losing and, being like weirdly horny and it destroying your life, Yeah.
And I find actually that a lot of the artists that I really like, they also have major respect for the poetry of Scripture. They make a lot of allusions to Scripture and they engage with it, whereas a lot of your contemporary Christian music does not really engage very heavily with the Bible. which is kind of funny, which is kind of an evangelical culture thing that happens in general. There's a lot of just this kind of cultural evangelical thing.
Yeah. Well, it's less about the story, and it's more about living within a specific community and having specific behaviors, you know?
Right. Whereas Bob Dylan, obviously, he was fascinated for several years with the Bible. Yeah, he loves the Bible. And that's really interesting to me, because it's interesting when people actually engage with this material that I grew up being told was very serious, but didn't see like our music taking it very seriously. So yeah, no, that I always found that interesting about him. Found it interesting things like, oh, he is a Christian or he isn't a Christian.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. He's just, I feel like at every era of my life so far, I'm only 25. I haven't had that many eras. I'm not. Well,
by the time he was 25, he was making, the most legendary albums of all time. So
right. So maybe I should,
maybe you should be get off your ass and make a
exactly.
One,
But I feel like every year I start to appreciate something different about his music.
Yeah.
And that's exciting. It's exciting when a body of work kind of opens up to you like that, and there's a richness to it, because there are lots of artists that I grew up listening to, like you grew up listening to like your Blink 182 or something like that, and you're like, this is the best music I've ever heard, and then you revisit it later and you can't really enjoy it in the same way did, or at least not for as long a period of time.
Well, because it's very youthful music. I mean, even into late Blink 182, it's still like quote unquote youth oriented music, whereas Bob Dylan ages along with his music, his music ages along with him, so it's gratifying.
But there's that youthful Bob Dylan music that you can appreciate, but then now you go through like a bad breakup or something, you listen to these songs of Bob Dylan in the late 90s about how he thinks he's gonna die, and you're like, this is me when I broke up with my girlfriend of 3 weeks or something.
I fucked it all up. I became a Jesus freak and then did a lot of cocaine, and that's what it took me to I fucked it up with Sarah. Oh my God.
Oh man. He's Bob Dylan, he's got a knack for just kind of destroying his life a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think he really likes just kind of upsetting whatever situation or paradigm he's in, and then adapting to whatever disaster he's prepared for himself. And
in literature, he's very much like Jon Snow. in that. No, but I do seriously. I was thinking about this and thinking about the arc of his career, and how one, it's all seems to be centered around his relationship with Sarah Lowndes, his wife that eventually he divorced in 78, I think it was, but
was in the process of divorcing.
But had a very tumultuous relationship. But it's clear from all his music, this was the one, this was the love of his life that he fucked it up with, and
also fucked it up with Joan Baez, though. We can't forget.
Very fucked up with Joan Baez.
He's not great with the ladies, really.
Great with the ladies, but the reason why he fucks it up with them is because he can't take these relationships of personality seriously, because it seems like at 20, like Robert Johnson, he made some sort of deal with the folk devil where it's like, I will inhabit all of these characters. I will become a conduit for the spirits of America. But as a result, I cannot be a person myself and give myself to love. I must, he sacrificed, he had this duty to this American folk tradition that he placed above everything else in his life. Right. And that eventually at the end of his career, for like the last, since basically Time Out of Mind, he's been this historian. That's this librarian of American folk tradition. This like swamp wizard who's constantly upholding, like, we're doing Zydeco and we're doing,
and what his partners don't understand is holding up this higher calling means I have to cheat on you all the time.
Yeah, I have to. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm a Rolling Stone. I am the Rolling Stone, and I have to. I'm very people think I'm hot. Because I am self-possessed and very serious.
Yeah. No, it's and that's what like we were. I don't remember if we were recording. We were talking about. No, this was I guess after we cut off of this part. We were just talking about whether if Bob Dylan has allegations. Quote unquote.
Yeah, is he? Does he have allegations? There
and we concluded
one
that one that seemed like it was debunked, but the more real thing was that he was definitely is a terrible misogynist. Maybe he's doing it ironically now. I don't really know. It doesn't really matter to me. But also, he seemed to cheat a whole lot on his romantic partners. Not a great husband.
I mean, even in the songs, there's like a resentment towards women that is like think about "Don't Think Twice, It's All Right." One of the most beautiful songs ever. Gorgeous fucking song. It is like, you just wasted my precious time.
It's so funny.
Yeah,
don't worry about it. You just kind of, ruined my life.
Just a fucking bitch. Whatever.
No big deal. You just kind of fucked everything up. It's fine. I don't even care. I'm not even mad. Honestly, I'm glad. Actually,
whatever. You can do what you want. I don't care.
I just imagine him like crying into his diary. He's like, I don't even care. It doesn't even matter. Don't even think twice about it.
But yeah, that's He had to move on, he's the criminal, he's the outlaw, no one understands him, he's always an outsider, which is why he cannot have love, Yeah, he's
exactly.
To the Mississippi.
Right, exactly. And, I wonder if maybe part of all of that is like you don't want to be this singular person. You can kind of avoid all of these accusations against you or avoid all of your sins by kind of becoming removed and disembodied. You're all of these different folk characters. You're not this singular flawed person, right? You're something above all of this petty mortal things that we be doing.
I mean, but that's what's so beautiful about Time All of Mind, when it all gets tied back, because he's been the same character for like 30 years now. Like in the back half since Time Out of Mind, he's been the same guy essentially, and he's been writing music that's like pretty similar to each other. Or, I only got up to Modern Times, but I imagine like even the new stuff has that sort of like, Daniel Lanois really outlined the sound of what he would sound like for the next 30 years on Time Out of Mind, and before that, the prototypical on Oh Mercy. Canadian excellence, Daniel Lanois. Thank you for helping Bob Dylan.
Speaking of Canadian excellence, we got our Canadians back on Spotify now, right?
Woo! Neil Young and Johnny Mitchell.
Johnny Mitchell.
They've forgiven Joe Rogan.
Thank God. The Canadian community has forgiven Joe Rogan.
The Canadian folk community of high-pitched voices. They have it's all done. But yeah, he talk about he even references Neil Young directly on I think Love and Theft. He says he's trying to listen to Neil Young, which is interesting to give him a shout out to his peers like that.
He was trying to, but he had Spotify, and Neil Young wasn't on Spotify. He couldn't listen to him.
You know what? Also, or I say contemporary, but like 2000s Bob Dylan, or you know what? It's weird how closely the sound of his various albums since the 80s track to George Harrison's solo albums as well. Like,
famously a great friend of Bob Dylan.
Yeah, Wilburys. I like that he's like, he's the Beatle that Bob Dylan really liked, because those other guys are a bit weird, man, but you seem chill, okay? You know? You let Eric Clapton fuck your wife, and you weren't even mad. I mean, you were, but you forgave him. I wouldn't have done that. I would have killed that guy.
But they obviously really loved each other a lot. And after George died, Bob Dylan said this thing about him. It was like he could have been as big as anybody. Like if he weren't a part of the Beatles, if he were just a solo act, he could have been as big as anybody, because he had the songwriting talent that wasn't always appreciated.
The Scottie Pippen of the Beatles,
Oh man, yeah. Who's Paul? He's Jordan.
I guess, but Paul and Lennon are Jordan together.
Well, is Lennon Rodman?
Lennon might be Rodman. I guess he's the
and then
worm.
Who's Ringo?
Ringo is I don't know who's the guy that coaches the Steve Kerr. Ringo is Steve Kerr. Okay. I don't know. Good utility player.
Oh man.
But
Scottie Pippen of the Beatles.
I think, Dylan was in many ways felt like the Scottie Pippen of America. He's, always, I'm always number two. I'm always, left out for some reason. I'm a Jew trying to live in a Gentile's world. The Jews are like the Scottie Pippens of America.
Oh, man. Feeling like the Jewish Scottie Pippen. Yeah.
I wonder what Bob Dylan's opinions on Israel.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah.
Has Bob Dylan come out as pro-Palestine? I don't know.
Well, he wrote that song "Neighborhood Bully" back in the '80s, right?
Is that what that's about?
I thought that was an. Is
that about Israel? Is that about Begin?
It's been a while since I've listened to that, but I thought that was his Israel song. And have you ever looked at that list that the National Review did like a couple decades ago, the top 50 conservative rock songs? And that was one of the high-ranking ones, was Neighborhood Bully.
Interesting.
Which is fascinating.
Well, is it's an anti-Israel or a pro-Israel song?
Like a pro-Israel, I think. I thought it was about like the victimization of Israel. And again, I'm just kind of shooting off at the mouth here. It's been a long time since I've listened to that song. But I thought that's what the consensus was that it was about.
Now, I just listened to it, and it's not a bad song. It's one of his rockin' 80s rockin' songs.
Well, one of the best conservative rock songs of all time.
One of the best conservative, alongside with Capitalism by Oingo Boingo.
Alongside 49 Rush songs.
Rush was it? I mean, I'll get off on a tangent here. I think Closer to the Heart is one of the funniest songs ever because it could have only been made by Canadian libertarians. Because the message of Closer to the Heart is, the elites should be in charge, but they should totally be nice about it. Closer to the, only Canadian libertarians could have come up with that message.
And see, that's veering away from the Ayn Rand thing, right? Which is the elite should be in charge, but they can be mean about it.
Yeah, they can fuck everyone to death. Yeah, Canadian. Closer to the Heart
Canadians,
that's
the Canadian element and the libertarianism there. They got to be nice about it when they rule over it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's our feckless Canadian libertarianism right there. But we produce terrible right-wing people.
I won't pretend I was always cool enough to have the right opinion on Rush. I remember buying. What's the Rush album?
Rush is great. You don't need to have the right opinion on Rush. Yeah. They're fucking cool. I mean, they're not, but I love them deeply. So.
What's the album where it's like the nude guy on the front of it, and it's like you see his butt on it? You know what I'm talking about? I'm trying to figure out which Rush album this is.
Is it 2112? It's not 2112. That's the guy in the star. Hemispheres.
I think it's the album that I think it might have been Hemispheres. I think it has that song "The Trees" on it.
Yes, I think that's Hemispheres.
That was I bought that album on iTunes. May have been one of the last. It was probably the last era of people who bought like things on iTunes, right?
Sure, yeah.
But I remember buying that on iTunes and being like, "Whoa, this is the best music has ever sounded ever." Blew my little teenage brain. Along with I bought Dookie by Green Day.
Oh, Dookie! I mean, these are all good albums.
No, that's a great album. And Nevermind by Nirvana.
All good albums.
Yeah. No, they are. They're all great albums. But all that to say, Canada. They've got some good musicians. We've got some good musicians. And Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Great
popping
musician.
off, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, actually, I was talking before how I had, I have a geographical reason for why I think Bob Dylan is the way he is. Because Minnesota is one of the terminus points of the Mississippi, right? And the phrase that kept, as I was going through his albums and his retinue of characters, of discarded Americana and people that have been unfairly persecuted, and even to the point where it's the foundation of America, the Puritans unfairly persecuted, so they come here, this story of people who have felt under the gun, and all of these legends travel up the Mississippi until it gets to him. And I kept thinking of the phrase American backwash. That's what his music is all about. It's all about American backwash, and he receives all of it in Minnesota. And he's this Jewish person. His family was cast out of, you know, wherever they come from, the Pale of Settlement or whatever.
Yeah.
And so he finds himself as this backwash character, this displaced diasporic Jew in the middle of this snowbound hell. I should say that about Minneapolis. But yeah, this terminus, this waylay point between worlds that seems to represent America, this transient individual, this man as an island unto himself, and all of that washes up to where Bob Dylan is living, and he absorbs it all and then says, you know, I have to return to the source of what I absorbed, which is why he eventually goes to the end of his career is marked by going to the mouth of the Mississippi in Louisiana.
Yeah. No, I really like that theory. I think calling it, you said the backwash of America.
Yeah, American backwash. Yeah.
And immediately that made me think of Warren Zevon too, because he's like the concentrated version of the backwash. I feel like just portraying these incredible assholes in all of his songs. And again, another friend of Dylan. Dylan's done covers of a few Zevon songs. I think he's done one of Accidentally Like a Martyr, Mutineer, maybe a couple others. But I think, you know, what you're saying about Dylan, I think he probably saw in Zevon.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think part of my reticence to get into Dylan before was because my predilection towards music was like very cartoony or erratic music, like Frank Zappa or stuff like, or Ween or stuff like that. Stuff that was more inherently unserious, or Rush even, which is very cartoony. And so Dylan, which is much more all over the place. He's like, the melodies don't move around as much. You have to really pay attention to the lyrics to get the most out of it. So I didn't gravitate to it as much. But now I do. Now I do, because I've as I get older, I feel less of the need for everything to be cartoons constantly.
Well, he still has time for his bubblegum pop era.
Yeah, we're waiting for his K-pop album, Bob Dylan's K-pop album. It's happening anytime soon.
Yeah, ready for him to become a slay queen over here.
Yes, he can slay Bobby.
I believe he can do it. I think he can. It's possible.
I mean, there's one live record where he's wearing eyeliner, and he looks pretty femme. You know, he looks pretty good. You know.
Yeah, he looks. He's a good-looking guy.
Oh, he's a handsome guy. You know, I get why women were throwing themselves at him, and it was, I can't. I'm sorry, Sarah. That just happens. You know?
Oh man, yeah, no, for sure. He is one handsome fella, and I love that T-shirt people made of Twink Dylan. It's like the picture of Dylan, and it just says Twink on it.
Yeah. Why I had a reticence towards Dylan is because I always categorized him and like Springsteen as something in my head as like, oh, bullshit Americana. Like I didn't really like, which was weird because I was a CCR guy, but CCR like because talking about the most bullshit Americana imaginable.
Right. But great songs, great music.
Yeah. And it was also compounded by the fact that I'm a contrarian, and like at the height of my college age when I was the most contrarian, like super NPR music was going on, like Florence and the Machine and like stuff like that, and like folk reclamation and Mumford and Sons and stuff like they were talking about. This sort of like
Lumineers.
Yeah, bourgeois version of this folk authenticity. And I guess I had looped all of the stuff that uses that imagery together, which was obviously dumb, you know. But also I saw like for some reason I had this knee-jerk anti-hippie thing going on that I had learned from one of my first memories of Bob Dylan was an Animaniacs episode where they go to hell. It's the same episode where that Blowback uses the clip of Saddam Hussein on Animaniacs going, people of Iraq, and then get sent to hell. In one of the rooms of hell, one of the tortures is, we are going to force you to listen to whiny protest music from the 60s. And they have a Bob Dylan surrogate going, I hate the government more than you and me. The government stole my goldfish and ends up on my TV. And the Animaniacs scream as if it's the most horrifying thing in the world. So I think this colored my idea of like what Bob Dylan was. Yeah, got Bob Dylan, yeah.
But speaking of... you were talking earlier before we got on the call about before this kind of bourgeois folk revival, there was the one in the early 2000s, right? And you were talking about Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, and then Dylan getting back into his folk stuff. And I'm thinking about this because I remember reading about Mumford & Sons, and the reason they decided to get into the whole folk thing is because they saw Oh Brother, Where Art Thou. Like, this soundtrack's pretty cool. We should start doing this.
Yeah.
So just like this kind of going from like a revival you had in the 60s going to this like commercial revival of the revival to this bourgeois revival of the it gets so convoluted, and then you end up with music that sounds like Mumford & Sons, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting that it coincides with 9/11. Whoa.
Yeah, literally Bob releasing Love and Theft on 9/11.
September 11th, 2001.
You might say an explosive drop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whoa. You know, Tweedledum and Tweedledee were the name of the Twin Towers. I'll tell you that much. That song is about the Twin Towers.
See, Bob Dylan was never a character where, you know, like with Led Zeppelin or Kiss or whatever, like, oh, you play the record backwards and it tells you these demonic images or something like that. But nobody ever talks about, you know, did Bob Dylan predict 9/11? Did he know?
Was he one of the Jews that were told about 9/11 happening before?
I'm sure, he probably got the chain email about it, and whether he read it or not.
I'm still on this. I thought Shot of Love got me out of this chain.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't one of the most recent Curb Your Enthusiasm episodes about how Larry's on like a chain group text?
Oh yeah, there was a very bizarre recent Curb Your Enthusiasm.
I'm sure Larry David and Bob Dylan, they're both on some group chat together, right? I mean, they got it.
The old Jewish guy group chat that they kicked Alan Dershowitz out of after he supported Trump.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man.
But the it's interesting because I see this folk revival as also coinciding with this need for America to explore its national identity, but in sort of like safe ways, because there was this very jingoistic exploration of national identity after 9/11, after, obviously referenced by the now dead Toby Keith, stuff like that. He roped poor Willie Nelson into making a lynching song. That's, shame on Willie for doing that. But like, I'm fine with Willie now. I'm not going to cancel him for Beer for My Horses. But it's like, even amongst liberals, too, and especially amongst the NPR set that Bob Dylan's music was now directly geared towards, is this sort of wealthy liberals who wanted to love America, but in a way that was appropriate for them. I think this... And even on Modern Times, too, which, like, with a title as provocative as Modern Times, you think, oh, he's writing about Iraq. But no, not really. It's still this sort of, like, folk revival, like Louisiana, Mississippi Delta traditional.
Right, he's writing about, like, Chaplin era Modern Times, Yeah.
So I think it's in the same way that, like, Food Network programming became really popular after 9/11 because it was apolitical. And not that, like, Bob Dylan's, like... post Time Out of 9 output is totally apolitical or anything like that, but it's like it's comfortable in a way that I don't think he ever tried to be before, because like you said, throughout the first half of his career, it's just, I'm gonna alienate as many of my fans as possible, as consistently as possible,
right? And
now it's more like, I'm old, I fucked up my life, I just want to teach you about goddamn blind Willie McTell, that's all I want,
right? And I mean, you've actually, I don't think this is on any of the studio albums, but this was one of his big singles in the year 2000. I want to say Things Have Changed. Are you familiar with that one?
Not. I think I've heard that one before, but it's like lamenting how, he's been outmoded by time. Even his, like, political ideals have been outmoded by.
Well, sure. And then the chorus is, I used to care, but things have changed. Right.
Yeah.
So he's much, it's almost like he's announcing that, you know what? Y'all take over from here. I'm not going to try to be a prophet or anything like that. I'm going to make my Mark Twain, Edgar Allan Poe music for people who want that. And then I'll just make all these really bizarre live rearrangements. But I'm not going to be the person who's, marching on the Capitol or something, or doing any kind of overt politics.
Yeah.
Although he did, didn't he play at the Obama inauguration, or he did something?
I don't know. That's funny.
It might not have been the inauguration. I think he played something for Obama at some point, but he's never. He doesn't come out and make political statements. He doesn't endorse.
Was he against Iraq? I think he was against Iraq. I don't know.
I honestly have no clue. I don't even know if he ever commented on it.
But yeah, it's interesting to me. I mean, that's what I find so funny about the song Hurricane, because it's like, by bringing it all back home, like, he had already. The thing about Bob Dylan is he's very egotistical. Like, everyone who's ever met him says, yeah, this is the most egotistical man in the world. But he's also very painfully self-aware, which shines through on all of his albums. So even by the third one, like, after the first, like, string of folk albums that made him a star, especially with, like, very serious, politically minded hippie people, like, he already understands that my music is not going to change anything. It's not going to do, which is why he instead starts focusing on more like a personally oriented stuff, more texturally, more sort of vague or poetic stuff, you know, starts doing Your Desolation Rose or whatnot. Whereas like the first three folk albums, you know, they talk about real historical figures. They talk about stuff that's happening now. They're much more indebted to Woody Guthrie in terms of style. Also, just an aside about those, I forgot like how good of a guitarist Bob Dylan is. Because you always think that, oh, Bob Dylan, he didn't have that much skill. You know, he was a good songwriter, he was a good arranger, he knew how to pick good musicians, but as an instrumentalist or singer himself, you know, he was middling or and that is not. He is a fucking excellent acoustic guitar player. Yeah, and, he could.
Yeah, he can really sing. Pick a song out. And yeah, you don't really get that impression watching a lot of more modern performances, because he obviously really enjoys just kind of messing around and noodling. Yeah. But he has the talent. He has the ability to play really well. Like, some of that finger picking stuff is really hard to do, especially when you're singing. So yeah, he has, you know, Bob Dylan, underrated.
Underrated Bob Dylan? A little underrated. Also, like, as a singer, too, which I'll get into later when I talk about how Street Legal turned out to be my favorite album. But what I wanted to get back to with Hurricane was, I think it's funny because he had basically discarded, like, political songwriting as a major vehicle for years and years at that point. Basically, since bringing it all back home to Planet Waves, there was, like, still some political element to his music, but it was, like, way less frequent than the first three folk albums, which are much more explicitly about upheaval and have more specific instructions in them. Right. And then in Desire, right after Blood in the Tracks, he's in, like, maybe if I do the most epic protest song of all time, and it's got a big chorus, and it's 11 minutes long, and it's like, it's got catchiest melody of all time.
Maybe if I say the N-word, I can say the word.
Right, he says the N-word in that song.
It's literally you saw that Ben Shapiro post, I think it was Ben Shapiro, who is like, okay, hypothetically, if like a nuclear bomb was going to go off and the code was you saying the N-word, are you saying you wouldn't say the word? It's like something like that. It's like, that's what's happening to Bob Dylan here. He's like, no, the only way to save this man, I gotta say the word. It was
1976. Patti Smith was getting away with it.
Yeah. You know? Yeah, a lot of people, and people would get away with it for a few more years after that. Guns N' Roses got away with it, right?
X got away with it. So, I mean, did they? They just weren't playing to audiences that were sensitive to that sort of thing.
But Guns N' Roses, they don't have that song on streaming anymore, and Patti Smith doesn't have that song on streaming anymore. But Hurricane's still up. That's
Hurricane. That's how good of a song is it? It is.
I feel like when it's literally, it sounds funny to say it, but it was for a good cause, I guess. So it was okay.
Sure, it's fine. You know, I mean, it's like, you know how Wu-Tang, if white people cover their music, they insist that they say the N-word. So it's like that. Oh my gosh. It's fine. Like, we are the ones who should be weighing.
It's like when Ben Folds covered was it Dr. Dre?
Yeah.
And he would say the N-word in that song, and he said that people would come up to him and say the N word like while he was with his kids and stuff like that. He's like, maybe I should stop singing this song.
Maybe I should do this. Yeah. What are we, Slavoj Žižek here, or what are we trying to do?
Oh my god! I just watched that video. Oh my gosh! Why would he?
Here's a take. Weird guy. A bit of a weird guy. That Slavoj Žižek.
He's I gotta work on a Zizek impression. He's just a really bizarre.
This is the story of the hurricane. And let me tell you, when I say this one lyric in the song, it will endear me closer to you.
He's constantly slurping and sniffing all the time. And I don't know if he, some people seem to think he's really brilliant. And I see a clip like that and I'm like, this is the guy?
No,
he's probably, his writing is probably really excellent. I mean,
he's good when he talks about Lacan. He's good when he talks about Freudian pervert stuff, and he's pretty fun with that. Cool. But, in terms of, like, how to race relations, Slavoj Žižek is not the guy that I will go to first,
His program, if we all said the word, then race, it would go away.
Yeah. It's like Norman Finkelstein on Anything But Israel. You just don't have to pay attention. You straight up don't have to.
Finkelstein, he is so funny to me, because he always talks like he's on like 0.5 speed, but he's like all the way volume.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Mr.
Here is what you have to, according to Wikipedia, you should have the self-possession to shut up. Yeah, he's a great guy to imitate.
It's like it takes him like a full minute to get a sentence out. It's like, what you have forgotten. I'm not gonna try to do like a Finkelstein voice.
Oh, you're not gonna? Why you're accused of anti-Semitism? No. I give you the pass.
If I knew I could.
Why? Because he sounds like a Jewish stereotype.
If I knew I could
want to do it.
If I knew I could do a good one, then maybe I would do it. But I can't even do a good racist impression.
You can't even do a good anti-Semitic stereotype.
How can I even call myself a Southerner?
This is the story of the hurricane, and I am going to. Also, Norman Finkelstein said that word on the True Anon interviews.
Oh, he did? Oh my gosh.
You can hear Norman Finkelstein hurricane it if you want.
Gosh. Oh man. What a character he is. Shout out to Norman Finkelstein.
I don't want to that's another person that comes with a whole package of discourse. Which all I'm gonna say is I like him when he's admonishing people I don't like.
Yes,
it's fun. It's fun to see him treat people out.
Pretty good ideas about Israel and Palestine. Yeah. Beyond that, maybe
you don't have to listen to him, but on the one issue,
it's fun to watch him dunk on streamers and stuff.
Yeah, I hate that. I hate Destiny so much.
That felt good watching him just go to town on him, just destroy him,
just wither him to death. Which is this has nothing to do with Bob Dylan. But,
I guess Bob Dylan was dunking on the racists, right?
Yeah, exactly.
With Hurricane. That was
exactly. Yeah,
we're bringing it all back.
The racists were like the Destiny. Of their day. The racist cops, the Gusano cops, like Destiny.
The Destiny of his day. Yeah, exactly. Yep. See, it all ties together. Yeah.
Speaking of Gusanos, I was so happy to go through because there was some just stuff I hadn't heard in a while. Like I didn't realize how good Motor Psycho Blues was and how fucking weird that song was. I was like, Farmer's daughter is trying to fuck me and she won't stop, so I said that I liked Castro and the farmer kicked me out. What a weird song he wrote.
So good.
It's
he does like a John Birch Society Talking Blues. And I don't think that was an album track. I think it's an outtake, but that one's also really funny. About how he's investigating whether or not people are communists, and then he investigates himself and finds out he's a communist.
Yeah,
it's a very funny song.
It's good stuff.
It's like you were talking about earlier. You were hesitant about getting into Bob Dylan because you liked these more cartoony things, but then you listen to Bob Dylan's lyrics, and it's like a comic book.
Super cartoony, absolutely.
They're all so silly.
Especially the early stuff. The early stuff is very like, I'm a crazy cowboy now. I'm a weird cowboy now.
Yeah. No, he's a very silly fella. Very silly fella.
And he gets punished for being silly. The sillier he gets
for his silliness. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's why every album where he just gets a little silly with it, people hate. People hated Down in the Groove. It's a fine... Down in the Groove is a fine album. You know, it's not like Knocked Out Loaded. Down in the Groove, there's some energy to it. You know, there's a little... it's like the tail end of the sound that he picked up on Street Legal.
Yeah. People hate Under the Red Sky because of Wiggle Wiggle. Great song.
Wiggle, possibly the best song about wiggling I've ever heard in my life, you know. He can't get a little weird with it. They won't allow him to get a little silly with it for some reason. Or
the jazz song he does on New Morning, Dogs Run Free. I think that's what it's called.
It's great track. It's
where someone's literally like scatting in the background.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So funny.
Yeah. And why won't they allow him to be funny? It's like everyone worships him as this great hero folk. I get why he was getting irritated because like the dick riding was insane. Like, especially if you're someone as self-aware as Dylan, you're like,
people freaking blazing him.
I'm weird. Why do you like me this much? I'm no god, you know. I'm just an asshole, you know. I fucked over Joan Baez. I fumbled that bag. Do you know how stupid I was?
He's gosh, I was sorry, I just totally went off my train of thought thinking about the dick riding crazy that means. But no, it really was kind of insane. He's just like, literally, get off my dick. Like, bro, I'm just a normal guy.
Yeah.
But then he's also kind of like on his own dick. Like, I was thinking about the Kanye line, like, I don't need your pussy, I'm on my own dick or whatever.
Yeah. Talk about the only other musician of the past 30 years who's produced good, decent Christian contemporary music.
Exactly.
I like the fucking gospel album. I like Jesus is King. I think it's a good album.
I do too.
I liked Donda even. He's gone a little off the rails since then.
And I think... I think that people have made this comparison. One of my Twitter mutuals, Vincent, he made the comparison between Dylan's Christian era and Kanye's Christian era, and how, again, he's just alienating his audience, like, very knowingly doing it. And he did that with Yeezus too. I guess that was his going electric, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, Dylan never had a Nazi era. I would like to see.
He never had.
I'm going Nazi. You know,
Bowie
you thought
electric did,
was bad.
So maybe the Bowie comparisons maybe a little closer, because Bowie had his little bitty Nazi era.
Yeah.
Which coincided with his cocaine era. Those go together.
The problem is when David Bowie became a Nazi, he wrote his best album, Station.
I was gonna say he was like he's say what you will about
what you will about the Thin White Duke, but he could turn a tune. You know, this Kanye Nazi era is not producing his best work. I gotta say.
Yeah, no, it's man, not a fan of Nazis, but for anyone listening, not a fan.
Not a fan of Nazis.
I do not endorse any of that.
They're right out. The more I hear about these,
they're right out. You know what? The more I the Norm Macdonald meme. Yeah. Whoa, he's a kind of compelling figure. Yeah. Oh, hold up.
Hold the fort.
Hold the fort.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Nothing like that with Bob Dylan though. For as bad as like he was personally, there's no like belief I find of his to be so objectionable. I guess that's why he's so guarded about his personality too. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of Norm Macdonald too, they I think they met at least once, maybe a couple of times, but they bonded over how much they liked Billy Joe Shaver.
Oh yeah. Love Billy Joe Shaver. Yeah.
Yeah. Old Lump of Coal, that is a great song.
Yeah.
Or
I
Old
love
Chunk of Coal,
Fast Train to Georgia. Fast Train to Georgia is my favorite Billy Joe Shaver.
He has a lot of great tracks, but it's interesting that Norm Macdonald, Bob Dylan in a room.
No, I mean, that makes sense.
You could do of these two characters.
Yeah, the old-timey Canadian. So you like old-timey sounding Canadian guys, Bob Dylan? I do like old-timey. You remind me of a young Rick Danko.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. They should have collabed. They should have written together.
Yeah, they should have had a folk comedy album together. Because I think, Norm Macdonald's style of speech kind of goes over finger picking. You could have him do something over there.
No, it's true. Yeah. Norm Macdonald, he's a good joke writer. Good joke. Underrated, perhaps?
Has anyone ever said
Hot take. Has anyone ever said this
before? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I mean, he's someone who's like very much. If you ever read his book, he actually does have this kind of Dylanish approach to old timey Canadian culture about the legends of the Ottawa Valley and Jean Leclerc, the wrestler who fell all the way through. That sort of CBC folksy quality to it.
And also
his jokes.
The Dylan approach to his own history, right? Like he just straight up fabricates stuff, right? Doesn't he? And Dylan does the same thing in Chronicles. Have you read his book?
I haven't read his book.
It's good. And he's like, he just makes a bunch of stuff up. It's awesome.
It's what you need to do.
And he calls it Chronicles Volume 1, but I'm like, I don't think we're ever.
He's not making another one.
He's not.
But yeah, I think the other thing about Dylan, which is, I write music. I write lyrics. Do you know he just has this insane batting average where not every line is great, but no line is bad, which is another thing. There's the occasional like phoning it in Dylan line, but he just has this just insanely high batting average for hard lines, for just like really just good turns of phrase that age well and aren't embarrassing.
He had bars. Dude had bars.
He had bars. Yeah. He had some excellent bars. I've been playing the hard dick's gonna come. I've been saying that to myself.
Well, it's
it's
hard.
Dick's gonna come. But he says there's that passage where he does that very repetitive. Well, I'm stroking the shaft and I'm licking the gravy. I'm taking the pubes out with all my teeth now. I'm licking the urethra.
I was thinking hard. Before the call, I was thinking before this call, how many chodes must a man suck down? You call him a man.
Yeah, right. So, filthy. I'm sure he said something to that effect before.
Yeah, well, and also you have the man in me. You don't really have to do anything with that.
Yeah, you got man in me will do most literally any task.
Yeah. All right, Bob. I didn't know you were like that. I didn't know
bottoming.
You were freaking like Bob Dylan power bottom?
Confirmed. Power Bob him. Power. Yeah. It's I first heard that song, of course, from The Big Lebowski, which made me appreciate New Morning. Yeah. Another I mean, that's the weird thing about like. So in the 80s, everything gets right. Critical consensus of albums generally align with how good the albums start being. But in the 70s, it was like all of like the albums that were reviled, Self-Portrait, New Morning, even Planet Waves didn't have such great reviews. Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, because it was a soundtrack album, got bad reviews. And you know what? It's a decent fucking soundtrack album. I don't get why people hate Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid so much. It's very pleasant. And it has Knocking on Heaven's Door right in the middle of all this, like, very gentle acoustic, very finely appointed, like, greatly recorded 70s acoustic folk instrumental stuff. Like, so.
Yeah, the Rolling Stone, especially, I feel like, was very harsh for a long time. And not just to Dylan, although they were very harsh on Dylan. But they were like, a lot of those Led Zeppelin albums got pretty bad reviews. And then later on, they're like, oh, actually, we meant 5 stars. It's 5 stars now. Which I think is so cowardly. Like,
well,
like Pitchfork does that now too, where they do the reevaluation of records, but it's just like, come on, stick by your 0.2 review.
Come on, you snarky hipster bitches.
Yeah. Oh man, because like if you don't have the snarkiness, what's Pitchfork even about? Like,
well, they're about nothing anymore because
that's true.
They got shit canned.
Shout out to all of my friends who worked at Pitchfork, I guess, who are
R.I.P.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. No more bylines.
Yep. Shout out to Chat GPT, now writing all of our music reviews and for the rest of the time.
Yeah. It's great. Well, we're doing music reviews right now, and the review that we've given Bob Dylan, good.
That's right, exactly. I wonder if you were to feed Bob Dylan lyrics into ChatGPT, if it would just kind of start smoke shooting out of its ears and stuff. Just like
Well, a black man got shot today, and I hate women.
Damn, ChatGPT, that's kind of like, that sounds like a Dylan bar to me. I mean,
exactly. It's beat for beat. He said as much in his song.
I remember IBM did like this gimmick commercial where Bob Dylan sits down with Watson. Remember Watson? Like the computer that went on Jeopardy?
Yeah.
And they start just talking about Dylan songs, and Watson's like analyzing the themes of his music. It's such a bizarre little commercial for IBM, I guess.
Yeah.
Just like generally. But
if you talk about the man I least associate with technology, it's probably
right,
Bob
exactly.
Dylan. You know,
I'm imagining some kind of updated, like he does an OpenAI commercial or something like that, where they talk about his music. I hope not. I hope he's fine just doing his really expensive whiskey, which is good. His whiskey is good.
I've never had the Dylan whiskey.
It's called Knocking on Heaven's Door, I think is
really?
what the brand is called. Yeah. I bought a couple bottles for some professors of mine that worked on like a Dylan project of mine. I shouldn't have picked that because it was like $100 a bottle or something.
That's a high-end whiskey he's got.
Yeah, and I was like, it was just graduating college, so it's not like I had a lot of money, but I'm like, oh, it's Bob Dylan whiskey. I gotta get it.
Yeah, we have the same thing with our Wayne Gretzky wine here in Canada.
Yeah.
The Wayne Gretzky wine is dog shit. The good Canadian Dan Aykroyd's vodka is good, and his wine is also good.
Man, yeah. Oh, he has like the skull one, right?
He's got
like
the skull. The Crystal Skull vodka is pretty good. Yeah.
That's so cool. I should pick some of that up.
Pick some of Dan Aykroyd's vodka.
Yeah. So we haven't really talked about the last night's show at all, have we?
No, we haven't talked about. I mean, that would be a good because we're coming up on a while. We've been talking for a while now. So
yeah, I know we should probably reel it in. Yeah,
we're at the end of his. So what was like? It was a real Asheville skyline. You were going.
That's what I was thinking. It was excellent. It was so good, and it was even better than when I saw him 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, he had nearly the exact same set list. The only difference was this time he played Big River by Johnny Cash. But all of the arrangements for pretty much every song was different this time. And it looked like as the night went on, he was actively changing arrangements, throwing new stuff in that his band was trying to catch up with. And his band, to their credit, was excellent. They never missed a beat at all. But it was very funny because I posted this on Twitter, but when he started playing, the arena or the auditorium had not even filled up yet. There were like hundreds of people still like getting concessions and stuff. And he just starts playing like, without
I'm
waiting
old.
at all.
I've got to go to bed by midnight.
So for like 3 or 4 songs, there are so many empty seats everywhere because somebody else replied that this happened in Orlando too, where they lock the door after every song. You can't go in while like a song's in progress. So there was like a backlog of people to get into the show. So people missed like half the show because they weren't right on time when Bob Dylan was. I was fortunate to know that he is a prompt fella. He starts at the same time, ends at the same time, basically every time. So I was like, I got to get there a few minutes early so I don't get locked out. But yeah, and he was doing like a lot of harp solos, a lot of piano solos, and he was like Liberace. He was like flying up and down that keyboard.
Oh, damn.
And he was a lot more adventurous in his playing this time than he was a couple of years ago. And he seemed to be having a whole lot more fun too. And the audience was loving it. Some people were loving it to an annoying degree.
Yeah.
There was a guy sitting next to me, and during one of his songs, or during a couple of his songs, he would just go, "Oh yeah," like he was, like, and he would do it with almost like a sexual, like, "Oh yeah," like over and over again. So he must have really been.
He must have be coming to Bob,
and
he was coming on Heaven's Door.
Yeah, exactly. And then there was a guy like in one of the front rows down on the floor who was standing up and he was singing along all the words, but making arm motions like Anthony Kiedis, like what he sang, like the whole time, just like he was freestyle rapping the song. You got all sorts of characters. One guy had to be escorted out for like kind of dancing drunkenly in the very front of the stage, but you saw all types of people. You had your hipster folks, a lot of like kind of 40, 50, 60-year-old hipster folks, a lot of people wearing like, what is it, like the military surplus type, like those jackets with all the buttons on them and stuff.
It's also Asheville, so it's going to select for
yeah, exactly. I was going to say,
well,
I was like, I wasn't sure if this is just Asheville or if this is the Bob Dylan crowd.
Some real NPR types is some real.
Yeah, but then you have like your J. Crew model looking type people, like, but it takes all types of folks. And then at the end of the show, I was just literally trying to leave because I had a 2.5 hour drive back, and I get pulled, like, this guy comes up to me and starts talking about, like, oh, I saw him at the Philadelphia Spectrum in 1974 when he played with the band. I was looking right at Robbie Robertson's ass the whole show. And it was like, and then he started talking to me about like the Book of Daniel and like the end times.
Okay, sure.
Talking about how FDR made gold illegal and like all this, like, just kept talking and talking. Really nice guy, but he was like, I could not make heads or tails about like what he was trying to tell me. He's like, I'll just give you the bullet points, and then he would talk for like 15 minutes about something I completely did not understand. But all that to say, you have all sorts of fascinating folks at the show. The people who sat right in front of me, it was a couple maybe in their 30s or 40s, their kid maybe about 10, and then their parents who were like in their 60s or 70s. And the father was like, yeah, I saw Bob Dylan back in like the Vietnam era, and I haven't seen him since then. And then everyone else was like, we've never seen him before. And it felt so sad. Like the mother was like, is this Willie Nelson's gonna be at this show too, right? I was like, no, did you think that was gonna happen? She's like, oh yeah, I thought it was gonna be a surprise for my mom, but oops, I guess not. So I felt
we just have to deal with this Jew. Oh, no.
I know. I felt kind of bad because they are playing together this summer.
Oh, okay.
But not at this show. It's like, oh, I guess we got to endure Bob Dylan, and their kid fell asleep like halfway through the show.
Well, it's very soothing, especially the newer output is very. It's
very soothing. Yeah, it's very nice. But yeah, no, this was just a really like dialed in crowd. They were like screaming, cheering, laughing, like standing up and dancing. Like, it was a great crowd. And Bob Dylan seemed in really good spirits, improvising, playing lots of solos, doing just weird random emphasis on different words. And every time he emphasized a word and like shouted really loud, people would go crazy. Ideal Dylan concert experience. It makes me want to buy a ticket to his next show, and I think he's in New York on Saturday, so maybe I should buy a plane ticket up for the weekend just to see that show.
Just to tour around like the great.
And maybe I'll run into Timothy Chalamet there, because I think that's where he saw Dylan last year. It was up in New York.
Well, that's something that I also wanted to talk about. Is it seems like you know how everyone on Twitter became really annoying about Steely Dan 2 years ago, including me.
Yes.
I can take stock of that, but I feel like this year is going to be the year of the Bob. Everyone's going to be rediscovering him.
I can't wait for like people on TikTok doing like Bob Dylan fits and stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, because he had a lot of great fits, but also, especially like the early folk records too. You listen to him and it's like, wow, nothing has changed. It's still the same shit, It's still, every political thing he's talking about is still the same, and it's, still extremely relevant, So, the limited functionality of protest music be damned. It's at least, what I got out of it was it's this incredible document of the era, which is whether protest music is effective or not, I think it's worthy of making good protest music to serve as a document of that era and what people thought at the time, and that not everyone was going along with these horrible wars or these horrible injustices.
And we hope our tweets will be a document to that effect about us.
Yeah. My Twitter account is in many ways like the freewheeling Bob Dylan,
Yeah, exactly.
It's all about lamenting civil rights and hating women.
Yeah. And then also realizing our tweets, maybe they don't change anything, but we keep doing them anyway.
It's good to have documents. It is. Yeah. I'm someone that genuinely believes it's worth it to have first Hey, that's why I podcast, because
it's true.
As my memory wanes as I get older, it's nice to have a recording of where I was and what I was thinking at a certain time.
Then several thousand years from now, it'll be like that Ozymandias poem.
Yeah.
There'll be rediscovering the time capsule, and it's just your podcast.
Yeah, and they can listen to us talk about Bob Dylan, but they can't actually listen to any Bob Dylan records. Those were all destroyed, but they can hear us make reference to it.
They can hear us make reference to Animaniacs referencing Bob Dylan.
Yes. Very, very, what's that guy? Baudrillard? Yeah, Simulacra. Whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I have an answer prepared already, which is top 3 Dylan albums. Like, if you had to... you don't have to choose if it's too hard of a thing, but I know my answer because I can pitch mine to you first and get your reaction. Because I listened to all of them up to modern times. I need to still listen to the later ones. I have a feeling that the later ones I'm probably not going to like as much as these 3. Which are I'll tell you mine while you think of yours.
Okay, I think Rough and Rowdy Ways, Time Out of Mind, and Highway 61 Revisit, I think. So
2 lates and one and the classic of all classics.
Right. And I think, it changes a lot. Yeah. Right? Like constantly shuffling these favorites around. But yeah, those have been in heavy rotation this past year. Excellent. I love, Time Out of Mind, you got your real depressed Dylan. Oh, yeah. So it's good whenever you're feeling angsty. That's the one to go to. And then, you listen to Rough and Rowdy Ways, you're like, okay, I'm in the twilight of my life, which I am when I'm turning 26. That's the twilight.
You're dead. You're a dead man.
And reflecting on all of the great writers of the past and all of my contribution to society, which is post. But then it's great to just go back to the classic, the really fun, just kind of juvenile in some respects. Yeah.
It's got, Tombstone Blues is one of my favorite Dylan tracks ever. That's a top 10 track for sure. Anything ex-blues, Outlaw Blues, Tombstone Blues, Subterranean Homesick Blues, Motorcycle Blues. Those, he was always the little fast-paced, talking a lot songs. I like those ones.
Bro was a speed freak.
He was a speed fucking demon. Yeah. My top 3. Number 1, Street Legal. I'm a big Street Legal guy.
Let's go.
I think Street Legal fucking rules. One, Dylan is at the top of his game vocally there. He is people thought Bob Dylan was a quote unquote bad singer, but he did it anyway. But no, he's a really good singer. He's very much on pitch. He's very much, harmonizing well with these backup singers, which he didn't always do. In the past, he wasn't always the best harmonizing guy in the world, but he really figured out how to do it by the late 70s. And it's funky. I guess people dislike it because it has saxophone. It almost sounds like Springsteen-ish in a way.
Yeah. It's got like that E Street Band kind of thing. But also the background singers, I think people really resented.
Why? They're great. They sound amazing because it was Emmylou Harris on this. There's one difference in these background singers that I notice, which is maybe I could write a hot take on that, but I don't know.
No, I think it is partially that maybe.
Yeah, well, because it does sound like Rolling Stone was famously like knee-jerk racist in a lot of ways, which you can read in some of their books. So it's like this more overtly blacker sound after he just made a very white record with Desire. I wonder if that affected it. And even like Slow Train coming in, like obviously the gospel he's drawing from is black gospel.
Well, he still has the gospel singers with him too. So it's very black tradition. Yeah, for sure.
So but I'm not gonna. I don't think I have the cultural leverage to make that sort of take.
And Bob Dylan also kind of has a Bob De Niro type thing. I think. Yeah. I think he. If I'm remembering correctly, he tried to get Mavis Staples to marry him. Okay. She was like, no, what the hell? He was like, please, Mavis.
Please, Mavis. You're very attractive. I'm very attracted to all black women.
But no, so Street Legal, I agree. He's very strong on that. And if you like that, you probably like the deluxe edition Live at Budokan that they just released. Because
Changing of the Guard, that pony song is the best song I've ever heard about wanting to have sex with a horse. But yeah, that's my favorite one. Second is John Wesley Harding. I really, really like John Wesley Harding. It contains what is now my favorite Bob Dylan song, which is The Wicked Messenger, because I like how short all the songs are. I think the production on the album is fucking top notch.
And the ear-splitting harmonica.
Yes.
It's so good.
I love how because it has that lo-fi-ish record, and as a result, it sounds organic, you know, like a Daniel Johnston album or something like that. But also, like, the little parables that he writes on it are so... Yeah. You know,
Frankie Lee and Judas Priest
from it. Yeah.
Frankie Lee and Judas Priest, they were the best of friends. It's such a, like, he sings it. It's such a funny sound to that. I love that song so much.
It's so
You're just like, what
good.
is he even talking about? What is the point of all of this? But I just love it.
Yeah, but it feels like he's taking on this preacher who's writing all of these little weird sermons about this American backwash, like, small town in the South or something like that.
And even when he gave up the protest songs, All Along the Watchtower becomes like a big Vietnam song when Hendrix covers it. So even when he's trying not to do it. Yeah.
And then the third one is Slow Train Coming, which is another
Let's
in that.
go.
Yeah, I think Slow Train Coming fucking rules. I think it's like, because it's, once again, it's funky, you know, like people hated him when he was funky. I don't know why. It's like, it's like you can really dance to it, you know?
Slow Train's a banger. Precious Angels, a banger. When He Returns, banger.
All of them. Yeah, I don't care if it's about
somebody,
Jesus
banger.
or whatever. It's like if he was this funky, if Jesus made him want to fuck this much, you know, good on him, you know.
Oh man, but like, I think it is interesting that he still plays "Gotta Serve Somebody," but with different arrangements all the time. Obviously, so good. And still plays Every Grain of Sand. So he plays 2 Christian era songs, and they're literally like the 2 bookends to that period. I don't know. I think that's so cool.
He usually there's at least one amazing song on every album. You can always count on that. They're like even
Pressing On. Yeah, that's a great one. On Saved.
Yeah, freaking. Hey, Saved, the title track on Saved is a fucking great song. I mean, that's the most classic, like, hot Bob Dylan take. Saved is good, actually.
Yeah,
because it is good, actually.
I love Man Gave Name to All the Animals. It's just like a groovy, stupid song. I love that. Yeah, no, he has so many bangers in the Christian era, and I think people just resent being preached to.
Yeah.
And also, you know, it doesn't sound like the old thing that I liked. It's a new, challenging thing that I have to... It's also,
the production is glossier, too, which maybe some people took image... I mean, it would get really dire from Empire Burlesque to Down in the Groove. They're not good-sounding albums. They're produced poorly, I would say. But
then when he gets to Oh Mercy, it starts to pick up again.
Infidels has kind of like a natty, thin sound to it as well.
I can't remember I think that's the one that Mark Knopfler produced, I want to say. Could be wrong. Maybe. But he also obviously is playing on that too. And he plays on Slow Train Coming, that album.
Oh yeah.
Mark Knopfler, Dire Straits, great musician. Has anyone said this?
I'm not. I mean, Dire Straits. That's something I need to get more into. I'm not the biggest Dire Straits guy in the world, but
they got some good music.
Aside
from that one song where they say that one word. That's
that way. Yeah, no, Bob Dylan said it, but that song's not as good as that song.
Oh man, it's I've always made the jokes. Like, I wonder if they play it like with Taylor Swift, change that one song to take out the word gay. If when Dire Straits does that one song, they label it homophobic version versus the version.
Well, you know, it's fine. All Mark Knopfler got to do is suck one dick. He's just got to suck one dick.
Then he's allowed to. I mean, in the 80s, everyone was.
Yeah, so it's, you know, he probably did. He probably
didn't even know it. Yeah,
he was probably sucking off Rod Stewart, and everyone got a belly full of cum, and they were happy. And on that note, Jared, where can they find you? Where can they see your wares?
You can find me on twitter.com. Some people call it X. I still call it Twitter. You can find me at StolenDans. And I think my @ on Substack is the same thing. The Substack's called I'm Your Dan. And I'll be writing stuff there sometimes. You should check it out.
All right. That's great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for convincing me to Well, I guess I sort of convinced myself to listen to every Bob Dylan album.
This Herculean undertaking.
No, but it was really good because for years I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm finally going to get into fucking Dylan. And I finally did it. And it's very rewarding because turns out he's good. He's good, folks.
You're enjoying it. It's like they say, what's the phrase? You must imagine Sisyphus happy.
Yeah.
You must imagine Sisyphus vibing. You're vibing to Bob Dylan. So you're trudging through the endless music. You're vibing.
I survived Knocked Out Loaded so that I could eventually get to
and it's all uphill from there. Yeah.
It is all uphill from there. Yeah. That's the only one. The only bad one is Knocked Out Loaded, I have to say. Yeah. And Dylan, the compilation one that he didn't make.
Yeah, it doesn't really
count. That's sort of
But it's been a pleasure. We'll have to do this again sometime.
Absolutely. We'll talk about I'll force you to listen to. I won't force you. Didn't force me, but
force me to listen to Ween.
Right? Yeah. I've done a Ween episode. Zappa. Okay. I'll get you to listen to Zappa. That's a.
Oh, geez.
And which I want to do because I know the Jokermen do not like Zappa, and I wanted to. Actually, there's more similarities between Dylan and Zappa than you might think.
I think I've only ever listened to like 5 Zappa songs, so that would be a big assignment for me.
He's super grating. I actually don't want to inflict Zappa on it. It's easier to inflict Bob Dylan on.
I'll just watch those videos of him talking about gun control.
Instead. His politics are not so good, but he's interesting.
Oh man. But it has been a pleasure, sir. It's good talking with you.
Take care, Jared. Very good to have you on the show. House of Decline is supported by members of our $10 Patreon tier. Big fan of noise. Cher, Connor Lane, Constantine Bristow, Daniel Stern, Dr. Spichemin Zero, Fiat Lux, Height Concept, Jody Shen, Jordan Rabe, Keaton Livingston, Kevin Ott, Kimberly Latroon, Liz Heckmayer, Miles Forrester, Piscadoro, and Tor. Thank you for your support.